Hello everyone, welcome back to ACCA F8 Lecture 4. This is a recap of the full course lectures available on our website. Also available there are all of our mind maps to download for free, so check that out if you wish. Right, looking at what we talked about in Lecture 4, the work of internal audit. Well, we mentioned in Lecture 3 that they carry out assignments and then they report on them. So what sort of assignments do they carry out? The first thing that they will often be looking at is value for money. Remember, internal audit want to add value to the business. So they'll look at different areas and see, are they getting value for money? So is the firm getting value for money? What are we talking about here? The 3 E's. Economy, and that means getting things at the least cost but maintaining the quality. Efficiency, which means the use of resources within the firm. And lastly, effectiveness. Are you achieving the objectives or results that you're trying to by this process? So that's what a value for money audit is. Some of the problems around value for money are measuring effectiveness. How do you do that? Well, firms will usually use key performance indicators. So that's what value for money is, and that's some of the problems around it. When it comes to IT, internal audit might be asking, well, does the system provide value for money? Is it best value? And we're thinking here about controls as well, controls around contract awards. So are there controls in place for awarding IT contracts? Are there procedures that the firm needs to go through to make sure that the right person gets the contract? Also, project auditing. So what we're talking about here is maybe a new factory is being built. They've got that new IT system, or they're using a new product or producing a new product. Well, what internal audit might ask is, are the objectives achieved by that project? Did we achieve value for money through the project? Are there any lessons to be learned by carrying out that project for future projects? So those are the sorts of things that internal audit will look at if there's been a project carried out by the business. The main area that they'll concentrate on are operational audits. So what are we talking about here? Well, internal audit will examine the business area, whatever it is, and they'll see, is there effective controls in that area? Can we improve the 3 E's, economy, effectiveness, efficiency? So for example, let's look at some of these areas. Procurement, purchases is an area that they'll be looking at. They'll want to see, are we getting value for money from our purchases? How are they going to check that? Well, they'll make sure that we're paying the correct people, we're paying the correct amount for all of the purchases that we're undertaking. We'll also be making sure that we're receiving the correct goods. So internal audit will go and check off to make sure that all of the orders made match up to the goods received. Maybe they'll look at the marketing department. Marketing will check, do they deliver the objectives? So when they undertook a marketing campaign, did they deliver the objectives that they sought to do? Did they follow the procedures that are set up for the marketing department? Did they breach any regulations? Remember, internal audit are looking at compliance with laws and regulations. Are there controls in place, for example, over expenses? Or could there perhaps have been any fraud related to expenses, which are usually quite high in the marketing department? Also, perhaps they'll look at the Treasury Department. Remember, the Treasury Department concerns liquidity and cash. So it's a key area. So they're looking at liquidity, foreign exchange risk, making sure that there are controls in this department. It's a key risk to the business. Internal audit will want to make sure that controls are in place. When we're thinking about HR, so are there policies and procedures in place? Are they correct? Can it avoid setting up ghost employees to make sure there could be no fraud undertaken? Are all decisions documented to avoid any laws and regulations non-compliance? Is there a problem with any loss of key staff? Is there some sort of a disaster management for that situation? Are there disciplinary procedures in place? So all of these areas internal audit will look at. And we saw how that can be applied in the exam in illustration 1. Well, once we said they've carried out their assignment, then they have to report on that assignment. So the principles around the reporting procedures for internal audit. First of all, they'll ask, who is it for? So they'll address the objectives of the report and make sure that it's understandable depending on who they're reporting to. The purpose and the structure will be set out. It'll be in a clear format and it'll set out the nature of the assignment that's been undertaken. It needs to be relatively concise because people don't have time to read massive reports into the areas that internal audit look at. It'll need to quantify their outcomes. Remember, internal audits seek to add value to the business. They need to avoid surprises, so they need to warn management if they're going to criticize management. And they need to be fair to everyone in the report. So the structure of the internal audit report, again, this could be coming up in the form of maybe a question 2, set out the structure of an internal audit report. First of all, there'll be the cover that'll set out the objective, the addressee, the date, and the rating for that area. Remember, internal audit look at areas of the business and they'll rate them. They'll say how good they are, good, bad, not good, awful, whatever it happens to be. Executive summary. Remember, executives don't have time to read the whole report. They need a summary there. So that'll summarize the report and will be concise. The key findings and recommendations will be outlined. So any problems that they've encountered or any breaches that there are within the business. Then the detailed findings will be put in there. That'll set out any recommendations, who will do those recommendations, and a timetable for implementing them. Lastly, there'll be that assessment or grading. It might be a star system, so maybe a 5-star system. It might be a traffic light system. It'll set out whether that area that internal audit have looked at is good or is it bad. So the process for any internal audit assignment is to undertake the planning of the assignment, to gather the evidence required for the assignment, to summarize the results, to come to any conclusions, to make recommendations, and set all of that out in the report that they undertake. Moving on to internal versus external audit. This comes up a lot in the exam, so know the differences between the two. Remember, internal audit is not a legal requirement. Management appoint them. They report to management or the audit committee, and they report on controls and systems. That's what they're there to report on. When it comes to external audit, it is a legal requirement for larger companies. They're appointed by the shareholders, not by management, not by the audit committee. They report to the shareholders. That's who the report is for. And they report only on the financial statements. They're not reporting on the internal controls and systems, although they will be interested in them to make sure that those controls and systems provide reliable financial information. But that's not what the report is about. The report is to express an opinion as to whether the financial statements present a true and fair view. That's what external audit are there to do. So we looked at illustration 2, which looked exactly at this point, comparing internal to external audit. So that was our lecture 4 on the work of internal audit. Make sure that you understand everything here. If you want to go back and look at the mind map, then download it for free at the website, or indeed book the full course if you want to go into more detail in this area.